Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Super-Fanta-Fi. This being a show where I talk about TV shows of the supernatural, fantasy, and or science fictional genre. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about the latest episode of Timeless. So in this episode, I was actually quite shy. I didn't know how things were going to play out. Okay, first of all, we had the team getting the mission that, like, oh, we want you to go back to 1962 in Houston, Texas. Oh, what's there? Oh, it's Flynn's mom. We want you to kill her. Excuse me? It's like, yeah, kill Flynn's mom, but she's innocent in all this. It's like, well, she still raised a monster. It's like, really? Like, she raised a monster? It's like, especially Mason has the audacity to say that. It's like, screw you out of anyone, because we know exactly why Flynn is the way he is now is because the Rittenhouse, the people you're working for, brutally murdered his family. So it's like, I love that you're like, oh, he started off, he's a monster. Like, she gave birth and raised a monster. It's like, screw you. You know, Lucy and Rufus are like, no way are we going to do that. That's like, no, we can't do that. We're not going to. And then Neville, played by Jim Beaver, being like, oh yeah, if you don't, I'm going to try you for treason and you're going to be spending at least 10 years in prison or something like that. It's like, wow, kind of tying their hands. And the interesting thing was, this is actually kind of Gia's first time really seeing kind of like, ugh. Because at first you can see her looking around, seeing all those like agents all over the place and getting super uncomfortable and everything. But it's kind of her first time really seeing that side of things. But then I'll kind of get back to that in a second. Well, I'll go ahead and talk about it. The fact is that when they stole the lifeboat, and then she, like, Mason blew up at her. It's like, oh, obviously Gia's got to be behind this too. She's with, don't trust her. She's sleeping with Rufus, and she's like, Mason, like, what the hell are you doing? Why are you running your mouth off? Like, getting mad at me. He's like, just get her out of here. And it's because he's in that position where he just feels like, okay, Rufus betrayed him. It's like, obviously him and Rufus aren't on the best of terms. I even love that little virus he put up there. It's basically a little cutout of Mason's head, and it's got "Eat Me" above it. But that was Gia's first time. Well, not really her first time. It's kind of her second time really seeing him kind of being very evil, because especially when she kind of went behind his back to get some of that information, he was like, oh yeah, don't do that. If you do that again, it's going to be very, very bad for you. So this is her second time really seeing him, but kind of seeing him blowing up like that. It's kind of a shame, because at the time, Gia really didn't have anything to do with what they'd done. But really quickly, that took me by surprise. Was not expecting. I was like, okay, so how are they going to do this? Are they going to like try and get him away from Flynn's? Because the dude that was with them is one of the agents. I was wondering, because I saw the preview of the person, there being another person with him. Didn't realize it was going to be someone from that group, that this would be their mission. But I was like, oh, they're going to try and distract him or what? It's like, nope. They shot him with a tranquilizing dart and knocked him out. And then they teleported. They jumped over to where Agent Christopher and Wyatt were waiting. And so it came down to, like, you know, Wyatt's like, all right, you know, we're all in trouble now, because, like, there's going to be a warrant out for us. Every agency is going to be wanting us captured. We can't show our faces anywhere. And Wyatt's like, all right, let's do some good work, and let's get Amy back. And Lucy's like, wait, what? It's like, yeah. Agent Christopher at first is like, that's not a good idea. It's like, no, you kind of need a win in their corner. It's like, the best thing they can do right now is get Amy. And the whole plan is like, oh man, we'll get my mom and Amy's, you know, who would be Amy's dad, to get together and, you know, and everything. But then immediately Flynn jumps to the 30s, where he helps out Al Capone. And so they kind of have to go like, okay, I guess we have no choice, but, you know, we have to go after Flynn. And it brought up that question again. Last episode, it was Lucy who brought up, like, oh, maybe we should leave Flynn alone. This time, it was Rufus. I mean, to be fair, it's kind of like the circumstances have changed for him, because he was the one to be like, oh, we need to do this. Obviously, he kind of spoke a little bit for Wyatt, like, kind of like was almost taking Wyatt's spot at that point, kind of like saying what Wyatt would kind of say. I mean, I'm sure part of it would be Wyatt being like, oh, well, it coincides with it, because Wyatt, you know, you could be like, well, Wyatt's a soldier, and it's like he's been given a mission, so he wants to complete it. But it's also like, you know, because Wyatt's like, you can't let Flynn go doing off what he's doing. He's killing and hurting a lot of people and changing history, not for the best, obviously. Because there's a lot of people that kind of die because of what he's doing and everything. And yeah, it may not overall affect history 100% in a certain way. Like, maybe it still turns out positive, but that's still a lot of people's lives ended. That basically this person could have went off to be something else. I kind of, well, go ahead and talk about, like, well, I'll get back to it. I'm sorry. Going back to it, like Wyatt, I mean, Rufus, how, like, I can understand his plight, because it's like, screw Rittenhouse, because they threatened my family multiple times. So, yes, last episode he was like, we should stop Flynn. just because it's the right thing to do. But now it's kind of a circumstance of like Gia's back there. She's left with all of those Rittenhouse people, and it's like she's in danger. So it's more so it's like, let Flynn do what he needs to do, because if you wipes out Rittenhouse, you know, Gia's safe and everything. So it's one of those circumstances. So, but in this episode, obviously, you know, I brought it up. Flynn went to Capone, helped him out with his old circumstance. Even helped him kill Elliot Ness, who was played by Misha Collins. I was like, I saw his name, I was like, Misha Collins. And to anyone that doesn't know, or I mean, best known for playing Castiel on Supernatural. But I was like, was actually expecting to see him a lot more in this episode. And then he got gunned. I was like, wow, that didn't take long for you to kill him. I mean, obviously Flynn set it up so he'd be dead, but I was like, man, especially because that whole story, like, he told Rufus, because he was like, basically, he went back down to Capone, knew where he lived, and so basically he sent his wife and children off somewhere else to kind of live with her sister or something like that, kind of get away while he stayed behind to deal with Capone. And it's like, man, like, and it sucks, like, his family, his children or child, I'm adding that because I don't 100% remember if he actually had children or not, even a child at all. But nevertheless, you know, his wife has to, at the very least, his wife, and if he did have children, they'd all have to kind of go on without him, and that's sucky. And because even Lucy's like, he was supposed to die like 20 some years from now, but a lot of interesting things came up about Al Capone in this episode that I had no idea about. There's stuff here and there you know about Al Capone, but not even that. Like, there's some stuff I didn't know. Like, for instance, he was 26 years old, because Rufus was like, yo, he's like, is that Al Capone? He's super young. It's like, yeah, when he took over the mob, he was only like 26 years old when he became the big time crime boss that he is. I also got explanation for the scars on his face. Apparently, he kind of insulted one of the guys that works for him now. At the time, they were younger, and he insulted the dude's sister, and the dude messed up his face. But nevertheless, the really crazy thing is the fact is that his sister, not sister, God, the really crazy thing is the fact that you find out about his brother Jimmy, obviously going under a fake name, Richard Hart, is actually a federal agent. And it's like, wait, what? Obviously, he distanced himself from his brother and that whole world. And it's like, dude, that's crazy. I did not expect that. That was because I was like, she's like, oh, there's someone we could, because, you know, after Elliot died, like, Lucy's like, oh, we could go to someone else. I'm like, who are you going to go to? I was on, tell me there's some other cop that can help out, which technically it was the case, but it's like his own brother, which he's super reluctant to help, because Lucy's like, we need you to kind of be there to kind of arrest him, because basically they need to stop Capone. They need to stop Flynn, yes, but at the same time, it's like chasing down Flynn should come after stopping Capone, because Capone is going to heavily change history. Already has, with the fact is that he killed Elliot, and that's the only man that was in a position to take him down and stuff. So, when it came down to it, though, like, it put him in a position, because it's like, you know, you have Al Capone pointing a gun at him, and then you have, particularly at Rufus, because Flynn was like, hey, I need you to kill him, because it's like, get rid of Rufus, and they won't have a pilot anymore, so they won't be able to follow him. But it came down to it, like, you know, because Jimmy distanced himself from his family, and he talks about the particular reason why. It's because he didn't want to end up like them, and he sees the monster his brothers become, and he didn't want that to be him. And like, so I'm just, it's crazy to think of like a situation like that. It's not the only time something like that has happened in just, you know, in just any storytelling, but it was just kind of like, I think this show is pretty historically accurate with some of the things. Obviously, some stuff has changed. And once again, a lot of what we know from history is just what's been written down and passed down. It's like, unless you're 100% there, you won't know 100% of the facts. But I'd like to think that probably is 100% true about him having a brother who is a cop. That's interesting. That might just be something they made specifically for the show, but if that's something real, that's incredible, because I've never really, you know, I've never read deeply about Al Capone, so I've never really I don't know much about his family. But like, one of his brothers is dead, his other brother is dead, his dad's dead. He talked about the fact that his mom was heartbroken because they hadn't heard from Jimmy in years, so everyone just assumed he was dead, and he didn't go to the funeral of his brother or his dad, so... what makes it even harder is the fact that Jimmy had to put down his brother, because it's like, no matter, even he had to agree his brother needed to be stopped. It's like, on some level, I think he wanted to arrest Jimmy. At first, he was like, this is a stupid idea. But then, you know, after hearing what Lucy's like, you're the only one in a position that can stop your brother, that maybe you became a cop because on some level you wanted to try and stop your brother, to save your brother. Sadly, I mean, I guess in some way you could look at it as like he did save his brother by killing him to stop him from hurting a lot of people. I mean, that's still a heavy burden to bear. The fact is killing your kid brother, because even he brings it up, it's like, yo, I was there wiping your nose when you were young, when he was younger and everything. And it's like, dude, to be the one that ends that, like, I mean, it's a situation where it's like between where the family comes first or doing what's right comes first, and it's like that's a very tough decision. But nevertheless, it still ended with Rufus getting shot, which sucks. And now, like, he's bleeding, and it's like they can't go anywhere because the medical team in this time won't be able to help him under his circumstances, and they can't go back to the present and get him to a hospital because immediately they'll be tracked down. And just like all of a sudden we see Rufus, hunched over. He's like trying to mutter to them. He's like, "Tell Gia." And then he ends up like, he's got the lifeboat going, but whether it's going to 100% launch, it seems like it might, just from the tiny bit of the next preview I saw, which I kind of get to in a little bit. But that sucks. I hope Rufus doesn't die. I think, because literally the entire episode, I'm like, please don't kill Gia. Please don't kill Gia, because they had that whole conversation. It's like, it's already setting it up to be like one of them dies, being like, "Oh, come back to me safe." And it's like, you be safe too. It's like, the moment that conversation happened, I was like, oh God. Because I was curious about that whole Gia situation, because he dumps a phone. I was like, oh, is they going to call her? Like when they jump back, I was like, oh, they're going to call her and tell her to meet him up somewhere. I mean, granted, they couldn't do that because obviously they'd be looking at Gia because they're already suspicious of her. So they would have just followed her wherever they went. But it was like, I don't know. I would assume that seemed like that might have been a Wyatt idea, but it also, I don't know. Cause I feel like, I mean, he was away from the others when he made the call. I feel like there's no way it could have been a situation where he did that on his own. So it had to be Wyatt to kind of tell him, it's like, okay, this way we keep in contact with Gia, because Gia is supposed to kind of act as a distraction. But literally the entire time, I'm like, don't let Neville kind of go in there and decide that he's going to try and kill Gia or something like that. And just the way Mason just fun, because even like, and once again, it's kind of interesting because Gia's like, I looked up to you, I was nervous and everything. I'm like working for the Mason. It's like you were an inspiration to me, and now I see you as nothing more than a coward. Which, like, legitimately, it's like Mason is on the wrong side of things. It's like, why did he have to do this? Because like Rufus is like, you could have made a choice, which he made his choice, and now he's sided with Rittenhouse. Because in the grand scheme of things, I guess in his mind, it's like Rittenhouse is the end all be all, because it's like they're already as powerful as they are. They can do a lot already, and like more so than anything, he doesn't want anyone that he cares about. Which at one point you thought was Rufus and his family, but apparently that no longer applies. But I guess it's like his own self-interest. Like I said, he doesn't want to die, and it's like if he doesn't play ball, Rittenhouse will kill him. Even if he's part of this, he can be replaced too. He's just piece on the chessboard for them, more particular a pawn. So he's not anyone of necessarily importance. Yes, he played a part in getting all this started because of his name, them giving him funding and everything. So, but I'm sure they have the resources to replace him if need be. But once again, give it up to Gia for doing what she did. Like basically, she broke some parts down and she made like a on the spot computer and basically shut down Mason by herself. It's like, dude, that showed you just how awesome Gia is. Like super smart. Like, because I feel like obviously she's kind of one of the tech people to kind of like, oh, let's check out the lifeboat situation. So obviously she's smart, but it's like you didn't realize just how smart she is. That took some like real smarts to do something like that. I know I keep saying it over and over again. It was like super impressive. And the other thing that came up this episode was Mason talking to Lucy's dad, which quickly I'll bring up the fact is that he was talking to her about the whole like killing Flynn's dad, mom thing. Like, oh, you just gotta do this one bad thing. I know you're a good person. You don't want to do this because it's a very evil thing, but it's like, you do this one thing, I can help you get your sister back. Like the fact of the matter is, he's like, I have resources that, Agent Christopher isn't allowed to have, which to me makes me wonder, is that going to play a part in the next episode? Because I mean, that's something he's going to keep holding over her head. It's like, I can help you bring your sister back, especially in this episode, because it's like she had an opportunity to get her sister back, but it's like now it kind of got jeopardized for them trying to stop Flynn, because it's like the fact is that the lifeboat can't make multiple jumps without having to stop the charge and everything. It can only do like 2 at a time, and they already did one, and now they've done another one. So it's kind of like there won't be enough time to go and try and fix her whole Amy situation. So maybe she'll be tempted by her dad to be like, yo, now, okay, when it's all said and done, come work with Rittenhouse and we can get your sister back. We have control. We have the lifeboat now, which I'm assuming, I get the feeling that's how this is all going to end. But nevertheless, getting back to Mason, he has a situation where he's like, oh, we can get me access to this NSA database. And it's like, oh, we can basically sift through all the information with this programming or whatever. Essentially, he's got something that basically is like, hey, we will be able to pinpoint anyone anywhere that you want to track down. And it's like, why are you working with them? It's like at the beginning it seemed like you were so scared of them, but now you're so eager to help them. I guess at the end of it is because Mason's trying to prove his worthfulness, because at the same time it's like everything's kind of been going wrong lately, so I'm guessing he's trying to prove like, oh, I can do something right for you guys, I can help you get your goals and reach them. So kind of being a kiss ass a little bit, but what that'll mean going forward, I mean, it'll make it a lot easier for Rittenhouse to take down a lot of people that they don't agree with, like people who might jeopardize them. I mean, in particular, it can help them easily track down Flynn, because it's like, oh yeah, it gathers all this information and it'll be like, oh, can easily track down Flynn and get rid of him. And then at the same time, it also could help them deal with the whole Lucy, Wyatt, and Rufus and Agent Christopher situation as well. So my question is Neville and them actually NSA agents? Are they actually the good guys, or do they know that they're working for Rittenhouse? Do they know that there's an evil? Because to them, they're probably thinking, because it's a situation makes you wonder, are they naturally being bad guys because they're bad guys, or are they being bad guys because they don't know they're being bad guys? They're doing their job and they're getting reports from higher up, which without them realizing, oh, Rittenhouse is a thing. I don't know. I kind of wrote them off last episode. I said that word. Kind of assuming that they were bad guys, but I didn't kind of think to think, oh, maybe they're actually good guys just being manipulated, like, our heroes. So a very crazy episode with a lot going down. Next week's episode is the season finale. I have no idea how this is all going to play out. Obviously, this whole situation is not going to be done, because there's still so much to this. There's a whole journal that Lucy had. Like, I don't know how this is all going to play out, how this is going to all end. Like I said, because like there's no safe place for them, because like once it's all said and done, I mean, Rufus and Wyatt are kind of screwed, but Lucy kind of has protection because her dad is part of Rittenhouse. I mean, in particular, her family is from a pretty prominent members of the Rittenhouse. They're kind of pureblood, so that might, I don't know. We really would just have to see. I'm very curious to see how it all plays out. Because another thing kind of brought up in this episode, last thing I'm going to talk about, is Flynn. He's asking for forgiveness. He wanted absolution because he was in a church. Apparently, church isn't necessarily his thing. It was more his wife's thing. But at the beginning, he's like, oh, I have a noble cause. I'm doing the right thing. But subsequently, it's fallen probably started to wear on him. He's wondering, is he doing the right thing? It's like, but the fact of the matter is, if you could change history and do, kind of just the ends justify the means. I know I've said it. I say it a lot. I haven't said it more recently, so I think I'm allowed to say it, just because it fits the mold of so much television. Like, there's so many, like, the ends justify the means is kind of the basic premise behind a lot of things. I think not just in the TV shows, but in life in general. It's like, doing bad things. Is it okay if you're doing it towards a good cause? It's the whole concept of morality, So obviously it has a basis in everything. So I do apologize that I constantly bring it up, but it fits so perfectly and under these, especially the circumstances. Like, is he doing the right thing? I mean, obviously he has a good cause and everything, but is he going about it the right way? The fact is, rather than going about it this very archaic way, maybe he could have joined forces with, granted, he thinks he's going to join forces with Lucy because of the whole journal situation, which at the very beginning, I thought it up as like a situation where when it's all said and done, Lucy writes the journal because she needs things to play out a certain way. Yes, she doesn't agree. Like, she has to keep this circle of time going. So it's like she writes the journal so that Flynn will eventually get it, so that she can, eventually get dragged in all of this, and kind of do the whole cycle of the entire series. Kind of, I know that's super confusing, but I got super confusing about it last time I brought it up a while back, and it's just as confusing now. Or maybe she'll legitimately just join Flynn because it's like she sees the dangers and all that's happened because of her dad and Rittenhouse. Because it's like I said, Flynn's like, oh yeah, you and me will eventually work together. You gave me this journal. I got this journal. I mean, because Flynn never actually said where exactly he got the journal from. He never was like, oh, I got it from Lucy. It's like, no, he knows it's Lucy's journal. And then it says they eventually work together, but it's like, where did he get it from? That is the question. Maybe it was mailed to him or something. Maybe Lucy from earlier in the time period mailed it to him. Or I have no idea. Or maybe she had it sent to him like when she was in the past or something and sent it forward. Like in the sense of like, oh, it's like, oh, deliver this to Garcia and Flynn's place in blah, 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 in 5 or 6 years. Something like that, because that's still a mystery we still haven't 100% figured out. Like I said, was it last episode, the episode before last? Or was it last episode? I can't remember. But she did get, it was definitely last episode. She ended up getting the journal. So it's already one step closer to becoming that. Like I said, like she hasn't brought it up to anyone. She didn't bring it up last episode. She hasn't brought it up this episode. You know, I guess the part of her trying to change her fate and trying to change things. So we'll have to wait to see how that all plays out and find out if Rufus is alive or not. I hope on everything he is, because it's like it's a crucial part of the team. It's like after him and Gia finally got together, and it's like after all this craziness is happening, it's like you can't do that. It's like don't be an asshole and kill him. That would suck. Like I said, we'll just have to wait till the next episode to really find out. But really, that's all I wanted to talk about in this episode. Till the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day and goodbye.